Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 105 of the Kouryer podcast. And yes, it's been a long time since I had an English speaking guest or an English or had an English speaking episode. So yeah, we're back again with that good stuff. And our today's guest is Devon Cady-lee, which
Hi.
actually we also have an extra special guest as well. If you could give us our here comes Dick Dog. His name is Dick Dog. Their
Yeah.
name is Dick Dog.
We
Yes, whatever.
need another gender.
Yeah, but he's gonna be with us as our assistant here on this
Yeah.
episode. So
Emotional support animal.
exactly. So audio listeners, go check on the YouTube versions to know what we mean. It's a beautiful, majestic lizard that's just chilling right on his right shoulder. And all right, so with that out of the way, let's get to the introduction. As I said, our today's guest is Devon Cady-lee. He's a visual development artist at Warner Bros. Animation from Los Angeles, California. Now, with that introduction out of the way, could you please tell us give us a little introduction on how we got into visual arts and design, initially?
Sure. Like when I was in high school and stuff. You're
Exactly.
like
Like, what
really
was
early?
a starting point? Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, everybody draws. Everybody draws. But then I kind of just kept with it. And I think it actually had to do with my interest in animals that I wanted to keep drawing because I had this crazy idea. I would be like a field naturalist, and I would like be like someone like Darwin and like go out and like explore, find animals and draw them in the wild. And so I kept on this like path of like trying to be like a scientist slash artist. That I don't know what kind of romantic life that is, but just going out in the wild. Of course, my grades didn't really make that available to me, so I had to concentrate my skills, and I just focused on being the artist part, which and some would say is harder, but I'm not sure. But I think well, no, it's probably a lot easier because I didn't have to learn math. But I stuck with it through high school because that was really about my only skill set. And so, besides knowing a bunch of facts about animals, and then I decided to pursue it when going to art school and things like that. So when I left high school, I went to an art school, and I think at the time I wanted to be more of a comic book artist because I was really into comic books through high school. And then I slowly realized I was more into the designing aspect, like actually making things look cool and world building and things like that, rather than necessarily the writing aspect. I just liked the performance and the world building. So I realized, man, what is this job? And I stumbled upon things like in the entertainment industry, they have things like concept artists or visual development artists, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is definitely what I want to do. Yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. Does that yeah make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Awesome. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, and actually, you hit two birds with one stone because then my next question was how did you initially were you going did you know that from high school you wanted to become an artist and stuff like that,
mm,
but you said it all in one package, so
there you
thank
go.
you so much. And all right, so the next question is, what is your main branch of design that you're focusing on? I mean, of course, in the introduction I said that you're a visual development artist right now,
Mm,
and but we like with this question I want to go in a little bit in depth, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
basically, tell us what your main branch of design is right now that you're focusing on currently, and also tell us about your experience from the start of it until now.
Oh boy. Well, I've been in the industry since like 2006, so I've it's been it might be a long tale if I told you everything, but um, I started in visual development, and I specifically wanted to do characters. That's what I was really interested in, and designing characters. And I think it was because of like some sort of, I don't know if it comes out of a need to like understanding people or connecting with people, but that's kind of like how I got into character design. I was like, and also of course animals. I was really into animals and beasts and monsters and things like that. So art was kind of an outlet to kind of do Frankenstein stuff. Like you can draw dragons and you can like make up new animals and things like that. So that was all very interesting. And as a result, I realized that you could do that as a character designer and like doing things like that in concept art where you're like making monsters and stuff like that. And the best outlet for that kind of thing was at the time was video games, and I was also a very avid video game player. So I started in the game space, and most of my career was in the game space, uh, it- uh, and most of it was doing things like character design, and also, of course, just random concept art. Like I just like designing in general. Like I like designing um, props, and I like designing sets and things like that as well. But it's just that characters just they speak to me a little bit better. Oh, sorry. And I think characters also help me kind of just understand. They help me understand myself a little bit better, and they help me understand other people better. It's just very interesting, uh, like line of work. I think like the way that you draw from experiences and apply it to character art is like really fascinating to me. So I like to mostly do character design. And yeah, my first studio. Would you like? Should I talk about my work experience kind of thing? Like my
Yeah, sure,
Oh,
100%.
sure. Okay. Well, let's see. Ooh, 2006. So I got my first job out of art school. Went to art school in Rhode Island, and then I started working in Boston, city in Massachusetts, in the United States, and it was a very dry. It wasn't a big. There's a lot of video game companies. There's like maybe three, and there wasn't a lot of video game companies within inside of New York City, which is where I'm from. I was raised in New York City, so it wasn't really like an industry. It wasn't like a booming video game industry, but there was Turbine and there was Harmonix, and I think Demiurge was another game studio there. And I just applied to basically any game studio within you know distant within a 4 hour drive of me, and then I eventually moved to Boston and took the job. Um, not as a designer, but I got started as a texture artist. So I was like painting textures for an MMO called Lord of the Rings Online, and so that was a really fun first project for me because um, it was based on Lord of the Rings, but since the movie had not really been established at that point, like the series was out, I think, but at that time, Lord of the Rings had started in development before the films came out. So what ended up happening was it wasn't art directed by the films, or it wasn't art directed by any of the other art books of Lord of the Rings. So we could make up a lot of the stuff. So as a junior artist working on a project where everything was kind of like made up, but based off of like a very familiar franchise like Lord of the Rings, it was easy for me to get into. And some of my first work was just doing texture variants of characters. So I would take like a low res models, right, of like a costume, and then I would like repaint it to look like something else, like a brand new content, right? And so it was like a cheap and easy way to make like new content. And so I got really good at painting realistic textures on these kind of like models and stuff. And that was actually my first kind of like designing wet feet. That's how I kind of got my first chops doing design work, was by working on these like texture models. And then eventually, the company had some layoffs, and so I was hired cheap as a concept artist. So it was kind of like a opportunistic thing, and it's just in the place at the right time, I guess. Um, and I was just able to kind of sneak in that way, and I became a concept artist after about 8 months, and then I stayed at that company for like 2 more years basically, and so that was kind of what my first gig was in the industry. Yeah, that helps. Kind of understand. It's kind of it's kind of a weird path, but I think it's also like it's going to sound familiar to a lot of people that are designers, like how that happens. It's not really like easy to get your foot in the door, and then like once you get in, it's like it doesn't depend on what kind of job you get, as long as you get in. Because for me, just being able to understand the industry and learning how to work with people, like all that stuff, all really basic stuff that like nobody really thinks about, like you have to be able to communicate and have like a schedule. All those things I was just not used to, because it was really like one of my earliest kind of jobs working as a creative professional. So yeah, it was a very great experience for me. Turbine was a great company too to start learning at. Yeah,
There's something I'm wondering while we were talking
yeah,
about
sure.
this whole journey, is that you said you started at 2006 and you
Hmm.
started right after art school, right?
Yeah,
So, and you also said you dropped out of high schools to pursue art school, right?
No, no, not no. I didn't drop out. I did get kicked out of a high school.
Oh God.
uh, I mean, I didn't. I didn't. I did so poorly and misbehaved so much that I got kind of kicked out of a school, and I had to like transfer schools. That was the thing that happened. But I didn't drop high school. I did get my diploma eventually.
Oh, awesome. So I assume
Hmm.
you entered the job market at 18, right?
No, no, no. Art school for me ended it when I was like in my 20s. So I was 21, I think, or 20
Oh,
or 21.
awesome. Do you
Yeah.
know why I say awesome?
Why?
Because
Why is that awesome?
yeah, that's awesome because the people that's actually really good content for the podcast as well, because that's one of my
Mm,
goals is to show different paths that people took, to get to,
mm,
in this whole art industry and stuff like that. And it's actually quite refreshing for me, to see, people who've had like, non uh n- like in normal non-typical, ways to get,
mm.
get got their foot into the industry.
Yeah.
Honestly, I kind of got shocked that you said your 20s. Like, it's nothing out of common, or I don't think it's anything bad, but I
Hmm.
was like, good for you. Like, honestly, like,
Yeah.
for
I
anyone
mean,
who's listening, like, you have time. Like, you can
oh
start
yeah.
anytime you want.
I think people start earlier than I do nowadays. Like they know what
Yeah.
they want to do much earlier. I didn't even know the job exists when I was 18. I didn't know concept art was really a thing. Like I didn't know because at the time in 2006 there wasn't as much of an industry for that kind of thing as it was nearly as much as there is now. Um, there was like the mass there was like conceptart.org. I would think was my first introduction to like what concept art was. And so like at the time there was no social media, there was no like, I mean other than like MySpace, I guess. And then there wasn't really like a lot of outlets for me to like discover what I wanted to do. And really I forget her name, but I have to give a lot of props to my uh, uh, like college, what do you call it? College counselor person, the person that kind of recommends art school to you. And she recommended that I go to art school. So, before that, I was like, I'll just be an independent artist, and just do whatever it is I do. Maybe I'll work in comics or something. And then her convincing me to go to an art school was really kind of showed me how to actually like, oh, this is a thing I can do. So I do give props to that, to being able to talk to someone that I was lucky that someone was able to convince me, and also that my parents were willing to trust me to do this. I mean, honestly, they didn't have much of a choice because I wasn't good at anything else. So it wasn't like I was going to be a doctor or anything. So they're like, well, if this is the way you want to make money, as long as you can do it. I was like, I can do it. So I have a lot of appreciation for my parents allowing me to do that too. I know not everyone has fortunate enough
Yeah.
to have like parents that are accepting of that lifestyle because it is very demanding and it's also pretty difficult. And I think it's hard to make a living as an artist. It's not easy. It's still hard for me now. So I think I'm very fortunate in a lot of ways, and I accept that the privileges that I had, and I really think not everyone like it's good that if you know what you want to do early, because then you can really kind of focus and like hone your abilities to do that specific thing. Um, on the flip side of that, I do think if you feel like you know exactly what you want to do at a really young age, I think it can also be a little limiting because it'll keep you from thinking outside the box a little bit in some ways. So I appreciate that I at least figured out what I wanted to do like after school, like into my 20s, because then I felt like at 21 I felt a little bit more confident that I wanted to do concept art, not comic books. If I had waited in those 4 years, I might have had a completely different career path. So it's kind of funny when I think about it like that. Like I could have been a completely different kind of artist. Like I probably still would have been an artist, but like I don't know if I would have been a designer.
Yeah, that's actually kind of like your experience kind of could be eye-opening for a lot of people, I think, personally.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people, like, for example, they're amidst of, like, for example, their computer science degree, and they're like
Hmm.
video game design, and they're like, hey, I kind of enjoy the art side more. and they're like,
Right.
"Oh shit, I need to finish this, then it's late and I can't. I just have to stick to this computer." And so like, there's a lot of cases like this that happen, and
Mm.
I think it's really valuable to for them to hear the stories of artists like the story you had, and other people. I think it was really eye opening. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem. Yeah. I think it's good to share
And
that kind of stuff.
yeah, and the next question is kind of interesting. What was the first art job paycheck you ever got? What was it?
Ooh.
What was it for, and how did you feel at the time?
The first, I mean, so I was before art school. I was working as an artist, and my dad, my father is a musician, and he has a lot of musician friends. So my first paid gig was doing an album cover for my father's friends like indie rock band, and so that was like my first paid gig was doing that. So yeah, that I think I'm trying to remember if I got paid. I mean, I think I got paid for some other random things too. I did drawings for like a religious pamphlet at one point. I did drawings for um, like flyers and things like that. So those are the kind of things I initially got paid to do. Nothing related to what I do now, really. But those are the first art related gigs that I did, and I guess they kind of got my feet wet in terms of like, I guess like understanding my worth as an artist. Like, I mean, you're not going to pay me just $15. You're going to pay me $100 to do a thing. So that's for me that was like, whoa, holy crap, $100 for a drawing, and I think that was also kind of helped me put me in the direction of like, oh, I can get paid to do something like this. I can be paid to draw. So that was motivating as well. Yeah, that I would say that's probably the earliest thing I can remember is doing that album cover. Any menial amount of money, $100 is pretty nice when you're like 16. So
Yeah, and fun fact: did you know that? Wait, yes, 2.5 months of work of a waiter in Iran is $100 right now.
mm,
The
yeah,
economy is that trash. Just a fun fact for anyone who's listening and is not one of my Iranian um, podcast listeners. Yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting when you realize this stuff. Like
it's yeah. I mean, like, yeah, service industry in the United States is very very tip dependent. Like they pay them absolute trash, and then they have to make it all up with tips, which is a bizarre tradition. I think instead of just paying people what they're worth, but it is what it
yeah,
is.
yeah, exactly right. But the thing is, no, the main thing about what I said was that um, it's $100 for 2 months and a half.
2 months and
It's
a half.
yeah, $100 right now, and that's not the worst part. You basically make enough to survive like that
Hmm.
in Iran. Yeah,
So the cost of living is a little
a
is okay.
little is a bit of an overstatement, but understatement. Over I don't know. It's basically a lot more higher than it should be. Like here's the
Mm.
thing: a university professor does just makes barely makes enough to.
Oh, education's always underpaid. It's
Yeah,
pretty bad.
yeah, but it's interesting actually. But actually, there's no tipping culture in Iran. I mean, some people they've learned and they tip the waiters and stuff like that. And I
Mm.
actually used to work as a waiter in Iran for a while.
Hmm.
Yeah, people sometimes tip me, but in general, there's no even tipping in Iran.
Mm.
But it's interesting, some. But another fun fact about Iran. Now there's a negative thing. Now that I'm gonna say positive to balance it out.
Okay.
So as like everyone else, who likes art and follows a lot of people on Instagram or on social media and other stuff. You also follow people from your own country and people near you. It's just
Mm.
an a natural thing you want. It's kind of helps you see yourself in the future. In their shoes, kind of
Oh,
like that.
sure. Yeah. To
And
be
of course I
encouraging.
yeah, and of course I naturally had and I still do follow a lot of Iranian artists, and I always I always was like, of course there I know a lot of Iranian artists and I follow a lot of Iranian artists because of that. But then
Hmm.
I had Rasha Alam on, I think, episode 20 on the podcast, and she asked me why there are so many Iranians asking me art stuff. Like, why do you guys love
Hmm.
art or something? And when I noticed the similarity in Turkey, where I'm living, Iran has a lot of artists, a lot, like in every
Hmm.
field. Like it's just so weird. I mean, and you can see a lot of them, like in the industries, outside in Europe and America as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm always surprised. Like when I go on like Instagram, for instance, and I'm just like going through stuff. People, I mean, I remember when I was younger, I thought all artists came from America and Europe, and then and there were like maybe some anime artists, and then and then like years later, there it's like completely different. Like the landscape of art education has changed a lot. Like everyone is being exposed to online stuff where people can like learn whole curriculums entirely online, which is very useful. And that's really kind of opened up the kind of gateway for a lot of people. I think that's definitely helped, and also people can be paid, things that are American rates or something like that, or the rates from a different country, and then for them that's like a benefit, and then also like you can just get clients from like just around the world is like really convenient. I really enjoy that. Before that, I was just like, oh, I can only work at the three companies that are right next to me, but now I can work in anywhere. I can work, for a Chinese company. I can work for a French company or whatever. And that's like it's a lot more flexible. I think right now is like a really good time to be uh, in our industry. I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. And all right, the next question is kind of an interesting one as well. Um, I'm gonna talk about the works you do for the studio you're working with, which in case right now I assume is Warner Brothers.
Hmm.
Um, or just in general, when you're working in a studio, how does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a project, like from 0 to 100, like when there's an
Hmm.
idea here and it gets, to the finished, final product,
Well,
how
I
does
will
your
say that,
process and pipeline go?
yeah, that process, I think that process changes a lot depending on the project, actually, because each project has a different way that you interact with an art director. Some art directors are like illustrators themselves, and they want to be very hands-on with all the design stuff. Some of them are very hands-off. Some of them, I mean, I've worked at some companies that don't even have art directors, where we just kind of end up art directing ourselves. At Warner Brothers, we have an art director, and we also have like showrunners and producers and things like that. And so when you design something, it has to go through this like gauntlet of people that are like reviewing content. So um and you may, and like, even though like you're designing the thing, there's still like other artists that you're working with as well. So there's definitely a much more collaborative aspect in the project than what I'm doing now, whereas like, like I might be taking something somebody else did and then redesigning it and then passing it back, and then or in the initial stages we might, just do pie in the sky kind of concepts, and then eventually they get kind of weeded out and they get picked, in a particular way. And also the show has a very particular style, so we no matter what, you're kind of changing the way for me, I'm adapting the way I draw to whatever project I'm on, and like trying to find the essence of that while kind of still retaining my own identity. So I try and continue the back and forth, but it's in the project I'm in now. It's very much like I'm working on a team of visual development artists, and then we're working under the art director. I mostly do character artwork, but I mean I'm pretty much doing a lot of stuff for the visual development, and it's been a fun process. It hasn't, because it's also because I'm friends, with a lot of the people I work with, and that's kind of helpful. That I can have like a more of a good repertoire to have good, feedback, like honest feedback with them and things like that. So, it really depends on the project. I mean, I could talk a little bit about specifically Warner Brothers, um,
Yeah, sure.
but I mean, like Warner Brothers is working on Gremlins: Secret of the Mogwai, which is based on a movie from the 80s. I think it was a movie in 1984, which is my birthday. But it was I'm in birth year, and Gremlins was kind of in the United States is famous for um, creating the PG-13 rating, or at least contributing to it, because it wasn't like, it wasn't like outright violent, but there was enough violence where they were like, maybe like 7-year-olds shouldn't watch this. So there's a weird balance when you're like taking something like that and then you're trying to turn it into a children's television show, because it's like, what are you censoring, or like what are you keeping? Like, in the original there was no blood, and we don't really have a lot of blood, but there is like, gremlins being put in blenders and things like that. And gremlins are like these little monsters that kind of run around. So there's that kind of end of the art direction, which is like talking about the audience and like adapting it. Um, and then there's also just the fact that it's based on an IP and it has to be like recognizable. So it's like these characters, um, if we, even if they're abstracted or however stylized they get, they still have to be like, those are gremlins. So there's an aspect of like taking what's iconic about the characters and adapting them to this like new kind of like much more uh, you know different, more abstract style, because it's like we're not doing puppets anymore. Now they're like, character, like 3D characters. So I think that's kind of also part of it. And what else, I suppose? I think on the project I'm on now, it's like we're also working with uh, outsourcing studios, or not outsourcing studios, but like, our collaborators, our collaborative studios, which are um, in Europe. We're working with a couple studios in Europe, and so part of that is also how we're communicating with them. And so when we're art directing the characters or the props or anything like that, it has to be done in a way that they understand it. So a lot of the art direction comes down to just trying to make assets for them that are understandable and easy to replicate, which means a lot of detail work on our end to like make sure that we have everything really precise and very specific, so that they get it right, and so that they understand what we're trying to do. I think that's yeah, that's probably the most unique part about this project.
All right, awesome. And I think I'm hearing a little bit of a squeeze. Is that TikTok making
Oh,
sound?
this maybe could be. She does his sometimes. I don't
Yeah.
know. She doesn't really do lizard ASMR or anything like that.
Oh,
I'll do it this way.
oh, the tongue flick is cute.
Yeah, they're called
Oh.
blue tongue skinks for obvious reasons. They have pretty blue tongues.
Yeah,
So they're
that's awesome.
yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
I said earlier I was obsessed with animals, and then that kind of just translated into me
Hello. Thank you
keeping a
for the
bunch of
tongue
animals.
flick.
Yeah.
What does it eat?
Dog food.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is omnivorous, so they'll honestly eat anything, a lot of things humans eat. But I feed her like these special sausages, special reptile sausages, and they're made from like dandelion greens and quail and like really nice ingredients. So I try and take good care of my reptiles and my
Awesome.
pets in general.
How long do
But
they
yeah,
live for? How long?
they can live for like 20 to 30 years.
Oh,
So
awesome.
it's longer
Awesome.
than a dog or cat for sure. I
Yeah. And all
have
right
cats too, of
now.
course.
Oh, you have chats?
Oh yeah, I got a couple.
Don't
Yep.
they attack it?
No, they don't even know what it is. They're just kind of like freaked out. But I have good cats. My cats are pretty good. I
They're
might have
polite cats.
yeah, I've polite cats. I've had cats in the past that would just do crazy crap, but these
They're
two are fine.
assholes, but
Yeah,
those
I've
are
had some
fun.
real asshole cats, but these two are fine. They're a blessing compared to the other cats I've had.
All
Yeah.
right, awesome. Now, actually, on I think the last post you have on your Instagram is about Lightbox that
Oh
you
yeah.
kind of attended. And is it still going on or is it over?
No, it's over. It goes on for about a week. I think it was from like Tuesday to Sunday. Ran by Bobby Chu, who is also an awesome artist and art educator. He runs like Imaginism Studios. Um, and Lightbox is like this, basically like an artist convention thing. I think you can actually see a lot of their videos still on their website. I was doing a panel. I did a panel on character design stuff, and I was also doing some drawing stuff. But it's just a really fun place to like connect with people and talk with artists. Especially after lockdown, it's just been like in the states, it's just been going on forever. So it's been nice being able to talk to other artists and like share experiences and things like that, and like talk about how the industry is changing. and things like that. It's a nice place to catch up with people, and also just make connections and just draw together. Yeah, all that stuff. So good
All
time.
right, awesome. And actually, I want to ask you about something related to this, that you kind of said you had a panel and you thought a bit about characters, and I want to ask you, have you ever had, like, aside from this, even before, experiences when it came to teaching art?
Hmm.
And is there any specific thing or a memory you have, or something you want to say to who artists who are listening who want to be teachers, or
Oh, who
anything
want to
like,
be teachers?
alongside those lines, and also from your experience of teaching as well.
Yeah. Well, I started doing art education a few years ago. I work with Workshop Academy, which is a company in Seattle. I used to live in Seattle, and so this guy named Josh Cow, who's also an awesome artist. I think he's working at Microsoft. He's doing like Halo stuff, and he just started an art education school in Seattle because for whatever reason, even though Seattle has a lot of video game companies, there's really no like education for like art entertainment stuff. So he just decided to make one. It was like excellent. So I started teaching character design there in person, and I did that for a few semesters. And I would say like for people that are artists that are trying to get into art education, like you learn a lot. I learned a lot in my first year because when you're trying to build a curriculum, you kind of have to deconstruct all the stuff that's going on in your head. Some things that you take for granted, some things that you didn't even realize, like how to communicate information to another person. You have to like organize all of that, make bullet points, make it like clear for people to understand. And when I'm trying to explain my thoughts to another person, it doesn't always come out exactly the way I want it. And so I benefited a lot from planning and being able to have like a good slideshow. And then when I was able to like see my thoughts on a slideshow and like go through it, I was like, oh, okay. It almost like was clarifying things that I was trying to think about. So it also helps me as an artist, um, being an art educator, because I'm kind of like, not only am I breaking stuff down for myself to understand better, but I'm also kind of holding myself up to the standard of me being an art educator, where it's like I have to listen to the things I'm teaching, right? I can't just be like saying this stuff. Like I should be able to also practice it. So that's also another aspect of art education that is very eye opening, I think. And then of course it's very rewarding to just communicate with other artists and like people that are coming from all different walks of life, especially with online teaching, which I've been doing more for the past couple of years. Like I'm getting a lot more experience from with artists from a lot of different places. Like what I was saying before, where it's just like art education is really reaching everywhere around the globe. So now I have students in like China, I have students in Korea, and I have students, also in the States and just like all around the world, like South America. It's been really kind of cool that way, and a lot of them are struggling because maybe their art industry is just not as strong as it is in the States, and they're looking for like kind of like how to like break in or how to do those things. And it just kind of reminds me of like when I was trying to do that. you know it was pretty privileged that I was able to just like apply to a company that was like 4 hours away. Like in hindsight, it wasn't really that difficult compared to like someone who like has no industry in their country. And so me trying to navigate that has also been interesting, like listening to like different the ways different artists in different countries are kind of like their strategies and trying to get on social media or like reach out to people on the internet and stuff like that. Things like honestly things like the Lightbox event. Events like that are really great and beneficial for people around like international students, because there's a lot of just access to a lot of resources that it might be difficult to get where they are. So I think our online art education has really kind of changed a lot of the landscape of the art industry. I think like doing a lot of this more online stuff is great. Yeah.
All
Did I
right,
answer your
awesome.
question?
Yeah,
Can't
yeah,
tell.
you did.
Okay.
No, no, it's fine. And the next question is kind of like, it's something kind of tricky. All right, I'm just gonna ask it. I'm gonna
No problem.
stop like making a introduction for it. Who are your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
Oh gosh.
Nah, I think you can see why I said tricky.
That is tricky. Well, I'm just looking at my bookshelf right now. uh, well, okay. When I was really young, I was really into comic book artists. I was really into people like Michael Turner and like Scott Campbell and Jim Lee and things like that. I was a big Image guy, Todd McFarlane, things like that. I was really into like edgy comics and like or underground comics. I read a lot of uh, Alien comics, so I was really into like Plunkett and things like that, and some other Woodring was another artist I was following a lot, and so like those were like my earliest influences, and also my early influences of like looking at other kind of like international comics. I read Tintin, and I was also really into Mobius comics and things like that, like Blueberry, and like and a lot of the a lot of his crazier art books I was really into. Who else was I into? Oh, Louis. I was also into pinup art, so I was really into and also like just in general like erotic art. So I was really into Luis Royo. He was like a big one, and I was also, and as a result of getting into that, I kind of started getting into like fashion people. So I started following fashion designers like Alexander McQueen and Aiko Ishioka and things like that. And then when I went to art school, like then that really opened up my mind to a lot of different artists, and I really started getting to like actual designers and things like that. Like Ian McKeag and who else? Like just people that really inspired me, like from video game artists, like Street Fighter artists was also really big influence on me. So I feel like I've had a pretty varied amount of inspiration when I was younger, and that kind of shows in my work, I think, because I'm kind of like I try and do a lot of things. I'm like a jack of all trades, master of none. I was also into like comics, like just, I mean, and by that I mean comic strips. So I was into like Gary Larson, designer of the Far Side, like just funny stuff, like Calvin and Hobbes and things like that. And also just like funny games, like Earthworm Jim and things like that. I didn't really, I didn't, I like Disney films, but they weren't really. I didn't feel like they were really a influence on me. But then when I discovered like alternative animation, like basically like any anime, and also just like other artists, like Land Before Time, and those kind of movies, those kind of had a pretty big impact on me. Um, yeah, I would say like almost movies have a bigger impact on me than necessarily artists sometimes, because I remember movies more vividly than um, than necessarily individual drawings. And I think that's why I kind of really got into more design work, because I was really into more of the final product rather than like just isolated illustrations. So like when I saw Aliens, and I really got obsessed with H.R. Giger, and I was like, oh, he was just like a fine artist, and then they just like hired him as a designer on this project. And so I think, I mean, he was an industrial designer as well, but so he already had that design sense. And so like I think that was also part of that inspiration, is listening to how guys like that kind of got their start, and things. And so I think that those were also a huge inspiration for me. Trying to think of somebody else. Uh, yeah, Amano from the Final Fantasy series. Um, uh, hmm. Yeah, I pretty much named a bunch of people like that. I think that's enough. I would say those are some of my major influences, I would say.
All right, and actually, I saw a post on your Instagram that you actually made a book, like back in 2019,
Oh, what?
creating characters for the entertainment industry.
Oh, yeah. I didn't actually create that. I was invited to do it, and
Oh,
so I was more. It was me, and I was collaborating with this what I forget what his name was, Jonathan. But how you doing? Uh, and he was kind of acting as like an art director, and I was working as I was kind of working as the character designer, designing for games, like designing for games. So it was something like where he took three artists, and then he did okay, design a dragon for video games, design a dragon for entertainment television, and then like draw, and then like design it for like another medium. So I was like the video game guy, and so I was like designing all my things for that kind of medium. Although, I mean, it wasn't really that strict, but but there's definitely things to consider when you're designing for different mediums. Like, for a video game versus like a children's animation, I mean, there's definitely going to be different art direction in general. Even if it's a children's action video game, it still has different direction than a children's live television show, for instance. And I guess what I mean by that is like there's just different components. Like when you're playing a character, you have to be a lot more interactive with that character. So there's a lot more immersion in like you investing in the character and the animations, having all those kind of fun interactions are kind of a really big part of designing a successful video game character. Whereas maybe an animation character, you might have to worry more about like, are they communicating clearly? Or do they have like a range of expression on their face that can, really communicate well to a younger audience and things like that. So I think those are kind of like the major points of that book. It was fun to do. And it's also one of those things where it kind of like lays out like kind of a groundwork for like what your thought process while designing a game character can be. So so if you didn't have like a basis for like where do I start? I think it's a good book to kind of break it down in terms of like here are the here's some key words you can use as a jumping off point, and then like what kind of imagery you might kind of pull from that, and then later on like what kind of how do you kind of resolve that into a final image kind of a thing. And it goes through the whole process of like drawing the characters and then drawing the expression sheets and then drawing like the action poses. So it puts it through the whole process. Yeah, so I'd say it's a good thing to practice with.
All right, and actually, I usually put this stuff for the end of the podcast, but I actually we're not at the end of the podcast, by the way, but I just want to say now for anyone who's listening right now, there's a link on Mr. Cady-lee's Instagram bio, which gets to an in-print page, I think, yeah, inprint.com page.
Oh,
And you can check out, maybe buy or order a print to support the artisan, not just, for supporting the artisan, or maybe decorate your house. The color palettes look good for, decorations
yeah.
in your, for
Thanks for the
interior
plug.
design and stuff like that. My pleasure. You're welcome. And yeah, definitely check that out. And actually, like I wish the Zencaster had a thing that I could share screen live. But yeah,
Mm.
just go to the link. Just go now. All right.
Gorham on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah,
Gorrem.
yeah. I'll put it in the caption. I'll definitely put the Instagram on the caption. So no worries
Thank you.
about that. And all right, so with that out of the way, let's move on to the next question.
Mhm.
I usually ask this question from people who actually have industry professional experience, and the question is: any advice and tips for a good portfolio and resume for artists
Mm. For um, for
for
visual
getting a
development, for character
job?
design.
Yes.
Well, I mean, so I think that's a big part of it is kind of understanding specifically what you're into and then really tailoring it for that. I think sometimes it can be if you have a kind of scattered portfolio, it might not look focused. Um, and I think that's good for some positions like visual development, where you're basically doing everything. You're designing characters, you're designing props, you're designing environments. Um, but I think it's important that if you specifically want to do like character design, you really have to have a really strong character design portfolio prepared. Um, that means doing a variety of characters. Like you can't just be drawing the same few archetypes over and over again. You can't just draw only pinups. I mean, okay. So the fascinating thing about this is, I think nowadays you can really get a job doing anything as long as you specialize in it. Like I've seen people online that just do portraits of girls every day, and they make a very handsome living doing that. Like you can do it. It's totally possible. It depends on your business model. You don't necessarily need a resume. You could just like do your own business, being particularly good at a thing. Um, but if you're actually trying to apply in the entertainment industry, then what you're the thing with that is you're trying to convince other people that you're good. So like other people that may not necessarily be artists even. So you really have to have a organized approach, I think, and that comes down to if you're doing character stuff, you have to have orthographs, like turnarounds and things like that. You have to do expression sheets, action poses. You have to show how flexible your style is or how specific it is. Can you adapt to things? Um, the thing with doing character work is, usually there's not as much character work for some projects as there are others. Like for instance, like a massively multiplayer online game where you need tons of content over and over and over again, or like a game like League of Legends where you just need character art over and over and over again. Those are some of the few jobs where you're actually demanding character art constantly, and it's in one style. Now, me as a contract artist, I'm working on MMOs. I would work on MOBA games. I would work on animation, and so for me to have my profession and the way I like to work, I have a range of styles. I have a range of character designs that I like to do, and that gives me more options. So more different. I get a lot more clients from a variety of different stuff, and I like it that way. And it kind of keeps me kind of motivated to like just kind of like learn different styles and adapt and things like that. So that's just like one path. I wouldn't say it's like the path, but I think if you really want to do character design, it's good to have a good range. Being able to, because character art encompasses not just, can you draw, cute pinups or like just monsters. Usually you have to do a bunch of other things. Like you have to design people, you have to design costumes, you also have to design animals, you have to design, a lot of different things. So, and on the flip side of that, it's a very specialized job where it's like there's not really a lot of positions of like just a strict character designer or a job where you're just doing character art. So if you want to do just that, you have to be pretty proficient at like doing that one thing, and you really have to show it in your portfolio. So I think definitely, of course, it goes without saying you have to have strong draftsmanship, and you have to have the ability to show expressions in your characters and be able to have characters that people can connect with. That almost goes without saying. And then on top of that, you have to come correct and like have uh, well organized work, like things that like are presentable. I think is the word, where it doesn't look like it looks like you spent time on it. Like even just things like putting together a website will help you a little bit more, as a professional. I don't have a website, but like I've just been using Instagram and ArtStation, but I think it definitely helps with presentation. It's probably hindered me because I haven't had a website, but I think definitely coming correct with the different kinds of assets that would be expected of you as a character designer. Um, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, in your case, I mean, it was different. It was a different time, and you also
Mm.
were physically near the places that you kind of, worked with, I guess. So, I mean, it was a bit of a different, but, I guess even if you were like, at the time again, right now, like 18, 19, 20 something year old, I don't know, whatever you were when you got into industry
Mhm.
exactly. But any age you were, even if you're right now, you're absolutely right. A website in the end is super important.
Mhm.
It
Just
is
having a
like,
hub.
yeah. And what are you working on right now that you can tell us about? What kind of project is it? I mean, of course, if there's something that's NDA involved, we can skip right past this question. Or
Unfortunately, I mean, besides Secret of the Mogwai, everything I've worked on has been pretty NDA. I'm going to start teaching again in fall, but everything else is kind of under NDA right now, so I can't really talk about it.
yeah,
I mean,
makes
I have my
sense.
personal projects. I do want to do more Twitch streaming and like do more online podcasts. I was planning on doing something with my friend Vinod, who I used to work with, Vinod Rams. Um, he was the artist I worked with at Motiga Studios, which is a game studio that we were both character designers on, and so just talking with him is really fun for me. So I was thinking maybe I would actually try my hand at podcasts, and maybe you can give me some tips later. But
Yeah, sure
yeah, that's
thing.
kind of what I had planned right now.
Yeah, actually, for streaming, it's not that bad of an idea because I think your art style kind of fits the colors and everything fits with for the audience that might cross over from other categories on Twitch to art category.
Oh sure, especially if I was doing fan art or something,
Yeah,
it'd be a lot
exactly.
easier.
And also you have TikTok and other pets. That's
No,
kind
I
of the
do.
appeal of the stream as well.
I do. I can do a lot of animal exhibition. I can bring up my other snakes
No,
and,
I actually
and
have an
pets.
idea. You could.
What?
Does it have a tank? Personal
It
tank?
does. Yeah, the
You can
enclosure.
set up a camera in the tank and set up a device. It's
Oh,
not that
stream
hard.
it.
No, listen. No, 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 no. Listen.
Oh no.
But just
Okay.
on the side, on the corner of your stream, there's like a footage of that thing. And
Oh.
listen, anytime someone
Oh.
subscribes, like a pellet or one of those
Ah!
sausages gets dropped.
I think that's really good. That's actually
You
a really
know?
good idea. I think that I've seen things like that,
Yeah.
and my lizard might get obese. But
Oh yeah, definitely that.
I'll
Yeah.
make the treats really tiny.
Oh,
But like,
oh, yeah,
yeah, just
yeah.
so it's
That's
like,
smart.
and the dig dug's just gonna be sitting there, just like waiting, just like
Yeah.
waiting for someone to like pig. That's a good idea. If I could find the technology for that, I would definitely do that.
It's not that hard at all. You can just buy a Raspberry Pi and just take it to, I don't know. It's not hard at all. Like
Yeah,
honest, I'm not a super tech guy, but
yeah.
like you can find a friend of a friend of a friend who can deal with this stuff. Yeah,
Okay.
it's super basic tech. Don't worry.
I'm sure it's been done already. I'm sure there's been like a live feed of an animal and they just like
Yeah,
drop
exactly.
treats.
No, it's just basically a signal. You just have to make like a tank full of treats, and
Yeah.
every time a subscribe, someone subscribes, it sends a signal to the Raspberry Pi board or other board. I don't know. Like you
Yeah.
maybe not even have to use a Raspberry Pi, something like that. And the signal gets sent to the device, and a pellet drops. Simple as
I'm
that.
I'm definitely very interested in that idea. If I could have somewhere where my animals are on stream as well, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Like I think there was Michael Reeves. I don't know if you know him. He's a famous YouTuber and a streamer. He's a pretty funny guy. Like I recommend everyone who watches YouTube videos if you're bored or on
Michael
toilets
Reeves.
and don't know what to watch. Yeah,
Oh, he's a toilet guy.
yeah.
He's like a guy you watch in the toilet.
Did you just Google him right now?
No, no, I haven't. No, I was just wondering.
No, no, Michael
No,
Reeves.
you mentioned toilet.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, of course. Like, I was just suggesting if you're bored and have nothing to watch, you can watch that.
Oh, I do
And
that quite often, so I'll
yeah,
definitely check
same.
him out.
Yeah.
Michael Reeves.
And he on his stream he has a drill and he has a tape on tip of the drill, and every time someone subscribes, the drill spins for like 10 seconds or something, like a dumb shit like that. You know.
Oh, that's cool. It's
Actually,
like a oh, it's like
he's
a
a
mechanic.
super tech guy as well himself. He's a programmer and stuff like that.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But it's seriously not hard at all. Like you can even figure it out on your own from YouTube.
I would love to be able to do something like that. I can't do it with my snakes so much because then they would be
Uh,
like dropping a whole mouse every
oh
time.
no, no, oh
Every
god.
time. That'd be a very obese snake, but maybe with
Ye-
this one.
I don't think getting obese is the main problem with that. It's the fact that a mice gets feeded to a snake on a stream.
Oh yeah,
That's the
that also
problem.
might be an issue. They're not alive. They're almost they're very dead when I feed them.
Yeah, but
So
still, the
no, so
visual might not
yeah,
be
yeah,
appealing
no,
to the
yeah,
audience.
yeah. Snakes are not very charming to show on
Yeah.
to show on television. I understand.
All right.
Yeah.
So the next thing is that what area beside the area you're working on right now, which is of course art, would you be interested to explore and learn in the future? And now let me add a twist to this question: not just learning stuff, like doing anything if you could.
Oh, like what would I like to do in an ideal scenario? I think. Hmm. Not sure now. I think I had a lot more of a specific dream when I was younger, but I think now I just kind of like want to be able to I want to be able to create characters that are memorable. That's really all I care about. I just want characters that are memorable. A memorable character is almost like a child that like lives past you. So it's kind of like, if you design something well enough and it inspires people well enough, they'll be hooked on that character for a long time and inspires them to design their own characters or think about characters or cosplay as those characters or make toys or things like that. So I'm really into just the idea of like creating memorable characters. I think, as far as like what I do, like, if it's in games or film or animation or whatever, I don't have a specific IP or anything that I have in mind. I just really enjoy drawing, like, I guess, if there was something I could do where it was just like perfect situation, it would be like something where I was just like maybe doing monster designs or creature designs like 24/7. That would be, I guess, really fun to do, which I've had in the past, and it's kind of what I do now. So, um, yeah, I think that's I don't not nothing's too specific. Um, Gosh, what could I do? I really actually, you know what? This is gonna be left field, but I actually want to produce more work with my partner, Michelle, and she works as a ceramicist, and and it would be really I think it would be really fun to kind of explore a completely different space, actually, like doing stuff on ceramics. So, character art and ceramics, can they gel? I've seen it happen. I've seen like really cool mugs. I've seen cool bowls. Ceramics being like clay and things like that. So, I kind of want to get into that a little bit too, because I think a lot of what I do is very like design specific, and I don't really get to see the end results. Or at least like once it's out of my hands, it's like it's out of my hands. Like, and then like other artists take it and interpret it and do their thing, which is great, and that's what I really like about it. But I don't really have a product or a finished thing that I have, because it's a character design is just this like nebulous idea. But when you're holding a piece of ceramic or you're holding an object, it's very different. I think it has a different impact on when you're making things. I think a lot of like people in the entertainment industry need to work more with tactile things, because it's very satisfying when you like make a thing, like when you draw on paper again, or when you are able to sell a painting. That's something a lot of digital artists have the ability to do. I know there's like NFTs and things like that nowadays, but it's just like not the same as being able to physically hand an object to another person and sell it for money. I think that's a very different feeling than what I do. So I think I kind of want to explore that space a little bit more. Yeah.
I actually had to Google what ceramicist is, but 10 seconds later, after I Googled it, you said, "Oh, sir," I was like, "Oh shit, yeah, it's ceramics."
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes. And actually, an idea just popped to my mind is that one day, if I have my own house, actually, I'm a kind of person like that. That when I have my own house, I would love to make all my dishes myself, like out of clay
Oh
and
yeah.
ceramics, as well, or even
Oh
my
really?
furniture's out of wood. That could be,
Oh
that
sure.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's just a fun thing building everything, yourself. I'm a kind of person like that. You
Yeah,
know.
definitely. I mean, like even having pets like this, like this thing right here. There's a lot of. I think a part of why I like working with animals, and that would be also a cool way to explore my position. Is like somehow if I could work with animals, that would be pretty cool with art and animals. I think that would be a cool thing to do. That's something I haven't really pursued is like paleo art or like nature, like naturalist art. Again, I think that would be really fun. But working with reptiles and things, you have to be pretty hands on, because there's not a lot of people that make products for the kinds of animals I take care of. So I have to like make a lot of them. And I think that's kind of gotten me into doing the DIY kind of action, kind of like what that's about. I
All
think that's
right.
that's definitely kind of helped my understanding of that.
Yeah. All right, so we've reached the final question of the podcast, which is
Sure.
kind of like a segment called Final Words. And basically, all right, let me explain. For
Oh gosh.
anyone who might, for anyone who might listen to this podcast, I don't know when I will finish the editing and uploading of this episode. But like, imagine for someone who is listening in like a week or maybe a month, maybe a year, maybe 10 year, 20 year, basically any point of time in the future when it's uploaded.
Mm.
Right now, it's kind of like a time capsule. You have a window of time to say anything you want as a human
Oh
to
boy.
another human that might be listening to this podcast right now.
Mm.
And I've come to this point. What would that message be? To help you a bit further, imagine that you have like a limited amount of time, and you're
Mm.
in a space station and your capsule is about to detach forever, and you're going to get lost in this voidness of the space, and you have a limited time to say anything you want,
Mm.
as your as a message from
Oh
human to
gosh.
another human,
Okay. As a human to another human. Wow. I mean, okay, so I would say, with especially with even my artist career and just like my whole life, I think being flexible and being adaptable has been a really big part of like my ability to be happy and stay happy. I think that's been like a big part of it. If setting up expectations, you know, I think it's great to set goals and things like that, but understanding that achieving those goals is not necessarily gonna make, like, once you achieve that goal, it's not necessarily gonna like be a lasting effect of happiness on you. So I think you always have to have something in front of you to do. So even when you start achieving your goals, I think you still need to be adaptable to like what's next. And also, like, if you can't reach those goals, you know, then what else can you do? Or maybe, when you are near those goals and you realize, oh, these goals are not what I built them up to be, they'll change your perspective on a lot of things. And I guess when I'm thinking about like where my career has gone, like, I really didn't. A lot of it was not very planned, but I knew I wanted to be an artist, and a lot of it has been me kind of coasting and um, kind of accepting new ideas, accepting new things, just kind of like taking on new projects just to learn. And for me, that's been very satisfying. It's a very human thing to just want to like learn and adapt. For me, in my opinion, to uh, just be flexible in terms of like what's coming, in terms of the obstacles that are going to enter your life, because you just can't predict anything that's going to happen. Family member passes away, or your studio closes down, or like you win the lottery. Like, there's so many things that can change the course of your life. And I think like being rigid to a specific idea is great for motivating you to like maybe get out of a certain circumstance or something like that, but you still have to be flexible in terms of um like being available for yourself to have room to move. Because otherwise, I think if you really put yourself in a box, it also kind of, for me, I think one of the worst things you can do is not be able to um, think outside of like your own perspective. Like, it's really important that I get out of my own head and have some like outside perspective on myself. And I kind of do that with art, and I kind of do that with my relationships. Like, I talk to people about things that are going on in my life, and I think being able to be flexible to change, uh, you know, in all aspects of life, like emotionally, in your professional experience, like being able to change is like so important. And I think I'm really learning to appreciate that well into my 30s now. Is like different, as time keeps passing. Like, you just have to keep moving and changing and adapting with the time. So I think, yeah, be flexible, be adaptable. You know, be like the lizard. Be like the lizard. Adaptable.
Hi. Wait, is that the sound of a snake in the background? Some hissing? I'm hearing hissing from your side.
Oh no, sorry. I think that might be like.
No, no, it's fine. It's fine. No, no, no. You don't need to. Like,
I think that. Do you hear that? I
is it
think it's like
ceramics?
a lawnmower. I think it's a
Oh,
lawnmower.
oh.
Sorry.
It's fine. It's fine.
Wow, my mic is pretty sensitive.
Oh yeah, it's actually a pretty good mic. And all right, thank you so much for coming by on this episode. Where can people contact you if they had a question? Is your Instagram DMs okay if I put it in
I
the
think I
caption?
think Instagram is fine. Yeah, Instagram first. Yeah, I think it's a good place to hit me up.
All right, awesome. And thank you so much for coming by. And thank you to anyone who tuned in and listened to this episode. I hope you did enjoy this and also enjoyed the presence of D Dog as well, our special guest as well. Yeah, so
Bye. I
thank you
can make
everyone
them
for
wave.
listening. If there's any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section. Whether on Castbox, YouTube, or Instagram, or even send it to me on my personal page, our podcast page. I'll definitely check them all out, and do keep them in mind for the future episodes. With that said, take care everyone, and see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.